I want to tell you about a movie I watched called Mowgli. It's a haunting depiction of generational trauma, illness, the individual, and legacy. Mowgli tells the story of Zahir, or known by his stage name as Zed, who is a Pakistani rapper who has been slowly climbing the ladder until he is suddenly diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that leaves him infertile. Zahir grapples with his need to leave an artistic legacy. Truth be told, I found it hard to find meaning in this movie. Some part of me wanted to categorize which of Zahir's interactions were of empathy or perhaps sympathy. But by the end of the movie, I felt that this movie was simply an artistic depiction of human empathy and its ability to relieve pain. We witness as Zahir drifts apart as his illness progresses, and we see how bitter his spirit gets. His family members disapprove of his need to continue to chase a legacy while his health diminishes, though the movie hints that they've disapproved of his art for some time, even prior to his illness. It isn't only his dream that he struggles with, but also a generational and childhood trauma that Zahir carries with him. It isn't until the end of the movie where I felt some emotional relief for Zahir, as his father raps one of Zahir's tracks with him, as if to say, I understand you, and I accept you. It is where Zahir accepts that although he is individual, he may contribute by recognizing that he is part of a larger whole that allows him to share his pain with those he loves. So it's a show of human empathy. To be very honest, I found it quite difficult to empathize with Zahir at first because of how he treated those around him before and during his illness. But I could not help but empathize with the desperation Zahir had to hold on to what he had worked so long for. At the final moments of this movie, I understood the healing powers of empathy and acceptance. The words, I understand your pain, and I accept you as you are. The movie itself was quite confusing, to be very honest. There was an actual personal, like a figure of his illness, which was this figure covered in flowers, and there were also various sudden descriptions or flashbacks of what appeared to be trauma, where they were, I think it was a form of immigrational trauma that immigrants face as they are moving from one place into another and then land someplace where they become part of the minority and subsequently may be abused in that sense, as a minority or excluded against. And I feel that although I feel quite great empathy in the sense of not feeling belonged or not belonging in where one is. I think that's one thing that I could empathize with Zahir for. It's not an easy feeling, and I know it's one that's it's one that forms a generational trauma. I feel that in the movie it's also depicted that the father experiences that himself, and so does the mother. And I do want to point out though that throughout his illness, Zahir does not only experience empathy from people. I found that the movie was quite emotionally draining in a sense, because he did not experience empathy from those around him for most of his illness. He would the people who had worked for him, his past managers, I did not feel that they treated him with empathy. Rather, they simply looked at him and then said words of sympathy that I feel sorry for you, but they did not feel the pain that he felt, and they did not understand the need that he had to continue his legacy or create a legacy for himself, and therefore they did not help him in any way. I found that the greatest depiction of empathy that was presented in this movie was in the end of the movie, where Zahir's father is rapping Zahir's lyrics with him. I think it's not only when he began to accept Zahir, but it's also when they acknowledged the generational trauma that they had. But it's a true testament to human empathy, you know, that you may feel pain as an individual, and you may feel pain as a greater whole, you know. I think that one thing that leads Zahir to a form of acceptance is when he realizes that although he is an individual and he wants to contribute and he wants to create his own legacy, the only way for him to really contribute is for him to realize that he is part of a greater whole. I think perhaps to end my movie review, I would like to quote a line from the movie that Zahir says early on in the movie. I personally disagree with the quote, but I can empathize with the feeling of wanting to be individual and the loneliness that comes from it, and the yearning to be able to prove oneself. So the quote goes, "That's why I'm built to prove myself. Your acceptance isn't helping. Love will make me lose myself." And that is my review of the movie Mogul Mowgli. Thank you.
Rhyme for no reason, ray revelation. Good book and garage, both Gabriel saved him. Can the right verse that I write, what my mum recites, bring me